Welcome to the Three-Headed Eagle Show. I am Jeremy, joined by Adam. Glad to be here with you today.
Hello. Hello, all.
And I love the old intro music that we replaced last time, but forgot about.
I didn't say replace. I never said replace.
Oh, you're mixing it up, huh? We can use either one?
Yeah, why not?
Okay. Yeah, whatever. Because
You can't tell me what to do.
No, you can't tell me what to do. We've got the First Amendment here in America.
Word.
You know where they don't got the First Amendment?
Canada. North Korea.
Keep
China.
going. Keep.
Am I wrong?
No, but keep going. You'll get there eventually.
You should reframe the question. Name a country that you would think, based on historical documents, that you would have freedom of speech, but you kind of don't.
Name a land that starts with ing.
England?
Yes, England. They do not have the First Amendment, and they proved it this week.
Oh, what those guys do
Oh,
this time.
in awesome fashion, they put a guy in prison for almost 2 years for posting on Facebook.
Oh, I didn't realize they had so much in common with Saudi Arabia and Iran and Iraq.
North Korea,
and
some of the other countries you were naming there. China, I think, could put you in prison for what you post on Facebook. Former USSR. They didn't have Facebook, but if they did,
you are correct,
yeah,
sir.
totally, they'd be all over that.
So how does that work?
How does that work?
How does that work? Like, you just post something on Facebook. What if you're like, oh, I wasn't in the country?
Well, let's take it.
How does that apply? Like,
let's rewind for a second.
All right.
Can you think of anything that you would post on Facebook that should send you to prison?
Ooh. Yeah, I could think something.
What?
If I had previously put a plot together to initiate violence, say had a group of followers on a podcast or blog, and sent out a tweet or an email or a message where I said, like a message on Facebook, and said, hey, this is what I want you to do, this riot, this violence, and you're going to start doing this when I post this on Facebook. So if you can prove that I'm directly planned and inciting violence, like giving instructions and commands via Facebook, then sure, what I post on Facebook could be used.
So you're describing conspiracy to commit a crime, like conspiracy to commit murder,
absolutely.
Conspiracy to commit terrorism of some sort.
So when I have my secret underground plot to destroy Jeremy West, and it all gets kicked off by a phrase on Facebook,
your plot will fail.
Oh,
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, well, cool.
But yeah, that's inciting violence, right? Like I'm actually making commands on somebody.
I get that. I believe in the crime of conspiracy to commit as long as it's well proven. But in your scenario, you had to build it up with other pieces.
Right, you can't just say something.
Can you think of anything that you would post? Only just the post is the crime. I would say the only thing I can
really
think
hard.
of is if you incited somebody to commit a crime, like directly. I post to you on Facebook, Adam, you should go and kill this person with the weapon that you own and the ammo you bought last week. And we have a conversation about it, and I convince you it's a good idea.
Sure.
I think I might have a part in that, and maybe I've committed some kind of crime, right?
Because it's directly related to pursuing violence.
Yeah. It can't just be like, we should kill some people, right? I don't think we should kill some people, but even if somebody posted that on Facebook, I don't think that's a crime. But apparently England does. So, and we bring this up, people probably listening right now going, well, so what? England, they're not they're not America. We're not England. We're separate. You never heard of the Declaration of Independence, Jeremy? Since 1776, man, we're not England. I know we're not England.
All right. That was
Shut
very
up.
good, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
That was perfect.
Because here's why you should just shut up and listen.
Okay, ready.
Because England and Europe are leading America right now. It used to be that America was leading England and Europe, that we were showing them, hey, you know what's cool? Representative government. You know what's awesome? Separation of powers. Now, actually, I might add that England was doing some of that before we got there.
Right. The Magna Carta is actually a pretty inspiring document in regards to freedom.
Right. But every historian in the world will agree that with the Declaration of Independence and American Constitution, the politics changed in the Western world, right?
Yes.
We were leading the way. Now, people are going, hey, we should be more like Europe.
Yeah,
Right.
because they're doing it right.
So you're probably a dumb guy that's trying to tell me that we're not England right now.
Okay.
First of all, I can't hear you, but I know you're talking. Okay. Second of all, England is leading us right now. Okay. And you probably will say in the next breath, we should be more like Europe. So shut up. Okay. So anyway, that's why we're talking about England. So this is what this guy did. Okay. Here's the rest of the story. This man, and this is quoting from the story on The Blaze, this man used Facebook to express his hatred for Muslims and has gone to prison.
Okay, what was the actual quote, though?
Getting to it here. He said, sorry, I lost the spot in the story here.
Okay. This is riveting. Thank you.
I know. This is really good. This isn't radio. Really good podcast right here.
If you-
Oh, here we go. Pelham, or Pelham, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, who is 49 years old, said on Facebook, a Facebook post, that Britain should institute a Bomb a Mosque Day and advocated that people put a Muslim on top of a bonfire.
What?
So, England should institute a Bomb a Mosque Day. By the way, Bomb a Mosque Day is the only part in quotes. So, I'm a little suspicious only because
you don't see the actual
it's a
comments.
dadgum tweet. You only get 140 characters. How much did you need to cut out?
And what's his following? Like that's the hard thing is you start to get into this and you're like, what does he have? 4 retweets? This is like does he actually have a group of people that he can give commands to and they'll follow through with them? I don't know. I mean, I'm very curious what the actual comment was. Like what was the actual tweet? Is there a link?
No, there's not a link to his tweets. It has his name, so I suppose we could go through the trouble of trying to find him on Twitter, but the name doesn't always get you. You have to have a handle most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But the point is, okay, let's say he said, hey, Britain should institute a Bomb and Mosque Day. And Britain actually instituted a Bomb and Mosque Day, and somebody in Britain bombed a mosque on that day. Is this guy guilty of a crime in your eyes?
It depends on whether or not he
Actually,
was
let's make it
involved.
more realistic. Pull Britain out of it. Pull the government out of it, and say
He just said somebody should institute Bomb a Mosque
Bomb
Day.
a Mosque Day, and
then
somebody's
somebody
like,
goes
"I'm
and
going to
does
do it." Is he guilty of a crime?
No.
No, I say it doesn't even reach near
No.
the level necessary, because it's not that specific. Now you're screwing me up on purpose, and you know
Specific.
it's not specific enough.
Sure. Sure.
It's not rising to that level that I was talking about before, where I said, you should do that, right? Because we're talking, it's kind of like the Charlie Manson crimes, right?
Sure.
Charlie Manson never killed anybody, but we know him as a mass murderer.
Because he got a lot of people to kill a lot of
Because,
people.
he got them to do it, right? And he was fairly specific in what he got them to do.
Sure.
And so we're talking about the crime that you and I are talking about, saying, yeah, that should be a crime, is the Charlie Manson type crime. And you could do that over the internet.
Absolutely. I mean, there's even cases of, and I'll have to look it up, where there's an app that links one person to another person, and there's a one person gives commands, and the other people try to one up each other by fulfilling them. And it starts very small, and then it builds up and builds up and builds up. And there's even stories where it's built up to the point where there's only a few people left in this quote game,
Uh-huh.
and it goes to the point where it's like jump off a building or jump off a roof.
Oh, I heard
and,
about
and
this.
it like pushes people, and it starts with obviously you're in a big pool of hundreds of people, and people drop out. I'm not going to do that, but it gets to the point where it gets really dangerous. So then
isn't
it starts
there
to get
halfway
into,
through? Isn't there kill an animal?
I don't know.
I think that somewhere in there, there's like kill it, and it's like kill a cat or something like that. Like it's a domestic animal, so that you can't go.
I'll have to look it up
I'm
specifically.
going elk
and then-
hunting. I got a permit, so I get a pass.
Yeah, I'd have to look it up and post it on our Facebook page later. But I was reading about it a couple of weeks ago, and it was really unnerving because it really shows you the power of words.
Uh-huh.
But you always have that in there of the free will, right? Somebody has the free will to stop, right?
Yeah.
Like you don't have to. If somebody says, "Hey, go jump off a bridge," you don't have to go do that. So at what point is it you acting on your own will, and at what point is it a psychological threat? Because there's legitimate issues with, say, psychological abuse, right, in a domestic partnership of some kind.
Specificity. Are you happy, Facebook? No, shut up.
Everyone's giving you a hard time, huh?
Yes.
Good. Good. I love our audience. They're fantastic. But that makes sense. Like there's legitimate arguments to be made when you look at a series of abuse that's psychological, right? And wouldn't this fall into an idea of maybe some kind of psychological coercion, right? Like you're being coerced to do things or to say things or to think things that you normally wouldn't under different circumstances. But the difference is like, how do you link that without a relationship or without some kind of close quarters? If person A tweets something and person B does something, but person B and person A have never interacted before, other than the one tweet or a few tweets, how closely related are those two events, right? Just because somebody does something that you said doesn't mean you commanded them or that you were part of it. If somebody, heaven forbid, this would tear us into chaos. If somebody actually really did something terrible to the president because they saw the image with Kathy Griffin, is it Kathy Griffin's fault? Right? I would say no. I think it was really obvious the difference in response to the shooting of the congressman last week. I heard many outlets that were hypocrites and many outlets that held true to a few outlets that held true to their convictions. And what's interesting is the ones that held true to the convictions were all, for the most part, all alternative media sources. YouTube commentators, bloggers, and podcasters. You had people like Sargon of Akkad, you had people like Chris Reagan, I think. You had people like Ben Shapiro. These people were saying, look, we all said that there's no way on this planet that the shooting in Tucson was due to a political motivation map that Sarah Palin created. Remember where they were targeting districts? Yeah. Right? And so we were like, Sarah Palin has nothing to do with the shooting. The shooting has everything to do with, what was his name? Jared Loughner?
Jared Loughner,
and the fact that he was nuts, okay? And the congresswoman who was shot, her name is
Gabby Gifford.
Gabby Gifford did not deserve it, right? There was no connection between him and his victims and him and Sarah Palin, right? So you can't say that there was any kind of collusion there, right?
Right.
If you were to claim that no, this wasn't right-wing extremism in that situation in Tucson, then there's no way that you can say that it's left-wing rhetoric. It's Kathy Griffin or it's CNN or NBC who caused this shooter, who was a Bernie Sanders supporter, to go and shoot up Republicans.
And let us be clear, we don't say that.
Right.
Right? Yeah. So there is some people keeping it right? I mean, there's some
but the people who aren't are
consistent.
Who are the people who aren't staying consistent that you've heard? Laura Ingraham?
Yeah, the people on the left.
Well, no, I'm saying the people on the right, and they're all establishment people. You're looking at the Fox News people, the Sean Hannity.
Yeah, you're right.
You're looking at those people who are saying...
Let me be clear on that. I don't consider Fox News right.
Sure, but they are... When you look at the general persona of politics in the media, if you're looking at the mainstream media, the progressive media, both left and right progressive media, they paint that fake line between Fox News and the rest of them.
That is true. They do that.
And so when I say right, it's not truly like they're not actually advocating for all that.
It's also
conservative
based on a
value,
complete false left-right dichotomy. I know big words.
Wait, are you trying to make up?
Trying to make up for that whole specificity. Jake did come up with a really good example on Facebook.
Awesome.
Said that it's similar to the girl that was found guilty for telling her boyfriend to commit suicide.
Yes, I did read about that.
And it is really similar to that because in that case, it wasn't just that she said, "Hey, go kill yourself," and walked away, right? That probably wouldn't be a crime.
He actually got out of the car and was going to stop, and she encouraged him to get back in.
In the car, he had the car on, and he was going to he was in the garage, and he was going to do the whole CO2 method, right?
Yeah.
And he got out and called her, and she said no. Get back in. What are you doing? You said you were going to do this. Get back in.
The whole time he's like, I don't know why I'm hesitating. I don't know why I'm not doing it. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. Like the whole time he was second guessing this because it's a huge deal. And the entire time she was pushing him. So that's totally different. He is following her commands specifically.
Yeah, that's the
She told him
specificity that we're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't know why I can't say that
He
freaking
did
word
exactly
tonight.
what she said.
But yeah, he did exactly what she said. She was specific in what she was telling him. Yeah, I think
absolutely.
that's a crime. I don't think, as much as this guy seems like a total and complete jerk, I don't think that put a Muslim on top of a bonfire is a crime. I don't think that's a crime speech. In a lot of countries,
it's a douchey thing to say.
Oh, it's a really stupid thing to say. I mean,
that's just straight bigoted. Like you can't just paint an entire group of people like that.
What if
That's
I mean?
so
You just think
terrible.
about take the crime out of it and just say, how would I feel if I said, hey, somebody should put a Muslim on top of a bonfire, and somebody came to me and said, hey, I did that.
I'd be like,
because you told me to, or because
me.
you suggested it.
Yeah. Yep. And even if it comes down to use the most extreme example, right? You capture an ISIS member who you know killed a child, right? We still in America would say, nope, not doing the bonfire thing. We're doing a trial.
Well, we do have the cruel and unusual punishment.
That is true, and that's part of our ethics, right?
Yet
and I think
another constitutional amendment that we have that's wonderful.
Yep, and I think that's good. I think it's good that it's part of our culture to say, and it's really hard to keep that, but it's part of our culture to say, look, they have their day in court. We're not barbarians, right? This is the difference between us and some other cultures in the world that would just, okay, we're just gonna slaughter, right? So it's a hard one, but I tend to favor speech as much as I can.
Absolutely. Support the First Amendment.
Yeah, because if you give an inch, they'll take a mile.
Yep.
And it seems to be that people are trying to do that, especially on college campuses. If you're following, that's the Greenwood College or whatever, the college recently that essentially cornered a teacher and wouldn't let him leave. And it was a pretty sketchy situation. Yeah. And it continued for several days. It's interesting.
Well, as a side note, there's a new drinking game going around. Have you heard about this?
No.
Anytime Jeremy messes up specificity, you have to take a shot. Thanks for that, Facebook.
Oh,
I'm not even going to say your name because you don't deserve credit for the quote.
Oh, yeah?
Screw you, man. What story do you have for us, Adam?
So this actually, I just saw this today, and it's been something that's been on my mind a little bit. And so I'm glad it popped up in regards to giving me a chance to bring it up on the podcast, but I'm not glad that it popped up because it actually happened, which is super frustrating. And anybody who's got a brain between their ears should be able to relate. And if you don't, comment on Facebook. Let us know. Maybe you're the one crazy person listening to our podcast and not on it. So essentially what I've gathered from the few articles, and right now I'm looking at Click2 Houston. It looks like it's just a news outlet in Houston. They said that a former Houston Independent School District police officer, now anyone who went to public school, maybe even some private schools, there's police officers that are put on high school campuses just as a security measure, right? And they work there full time. And we actually had a really cool officer at my school growing up in California. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. Kids are hormonal and freaking crazy, and some of them are prone to violence. So having a cop there is not a bad thing. So, but this particular cop, he's 30 years old, and he essentially is guilty. He pled guilty to sexual misconduct with a minor. And here's the thing. He was caught. He pled guilty, right? He had his day in court and all that stuff. That's all good, and it all worked, right? He pled guilty. And all that stuff happened. So far you're like, oh great, the system worked. We got a pedophile essentially.
We got him. Yes.
Off the police force and out of the school, and he's been convicted of a crime, right? Great. Well, here's where it gets ridiculous. During that time, he can't have. Okay, he said that he has 5 years deferred adjunction. Okay, and during that time, he can't have contact with the victim or any minors except for his young son, and they'll monitor him. They'll monitor him as a sex offender. He also has to surrender his license to be a law enforcement officer in Texas. So what's interesting about this is
Stand by. Is that the whole sentence?
What's that?
Is that the whole sentence?
Which sentence?
The stuff that the sentence for the crime, not the whole sentence, like the words before the period.
As far as I can tell, it says that he will be monitored as they will monitor him as a sex offender. It seems to me as it's written, he's not going to prison, and it says he will serve 5 years. So he'll be monitored as a sex offender for 5 years.
But it doesn't even say he'll have to register as a sex offender.
This guy had inappropriate relationships with someone under his protection in regards to a student at the school, right? He's supposed to be looking out for the safety and well-being of these students. She was 14 years old, right? She's not a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old senior or someone that, you know, is like, oh, but my birthday's next month, where you're kind of like, oh, that's a tough one, right? Mm-hmm. Because anyone who's in high school and has been in high school for the last 10 or 12 years, or in the last 10 or 12 years, knows that like kids between themselves are fairly promiscuous and they're experimenting, right? It's kind of that age.
Right.
I totally get that, but he's 30 years old. He's double the age. He should know better, right?
Right.
So, yes, he can't be a cop anymore. Fine.
And that's it.
But that's basically it. After 5 years, what the crap, man?
He's losing his job, and they're going to monitor him as a sex offender rather than he's going to be a
right.
felon.
This is super frustrating.
So
super frustrating.
Set aside set aside your feelings about whether sex offenders should have to register, whether they can actually rehabilitate themselves, and because that's a different conversation, right? And just say we're talking about why is he getting this treatment, whereas other people would not, right?
Right.
That's your question?
That's really when it comes down to it, is why? Why is he getting away with it in regards to like such a minimal sentence? We just had a super frustrating situation with sexual abuse with that Brock Turner kid.
So we got,
and now we have a cop who's getting away with it.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, what's going on? Like, this is not a good precedence to set.
Right. No, look, you got a whole lot of anger against the police these days. You got like the Black Lives Matter movement, in large part because of YouTube and stuff like that. We're more informed of bad situations that cops get themselves into, and there are plenty. I don't think all of them that we hear about are those situations, but the point is, this was probably a good opportunity for the justice system to show that police get treated equally when they're on trial.
Right.
And it failed.
Right.
We do have Phil wanted to be devil's advocate on Facebook and
which
say,
is good. Go for it.
Okay.
Essentially,
Sorry. He commented twice. I want to go to his first one. The reason he doesn't have to register as a sex offender is because his LEO position is what presented him with that situation in which he was tempted and succumbed to opportunity that otherwise won't exist. Yeah, but the problem with that is that if you know you're that type of person, if you know that you're tempted in that situation, or you feel the temptation early on, you go to your supervisor and say, "You got to get me the heck out of here."
Right. You say,
That's
"There's
your
a handful.
responsibility.
There's a handful of students, or there's one student that keeps getting in trouble, and she's keep making advances on me, and it's to the point where I need to be transferred."
Yep. You either stop the student, or you transfer.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to go to another position.
I've seen that situation where you're working at a job, or you're doing or you're an officer. For this case, it was while I was on my 2-year mission for my church. I knew people and who were basically in a situation where, you know, anyone who knows about Mormon missionaries, you're supposed to refrain from any kind of relationships with girls or anything while you're on the mission, and then when you get home, you date, get married, all that stuff. When they came up against a situation where one of the people in the congregation were kind of building a relationship with one of the missionaries, he was honest enough to say, "Hey, look, I'm really tempted here, you know, and he asked to be transferred to another place.
Uh-huh.
And there's nothing wrong with saying, look, there's a problem. I recognize that problem. And if you go to a supervisor and say, hey, there's a problem, there could be a problem, and I want to avoid it at all costs because I want to be honest.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with stepping up and saying there's like, and I would hope that his higher ups would say, I understand that. Totally makes sense. Let me see what I can do to get you transferred.
And you can say nobody wants to admit that they have feelings for kids, which is what we're getting on Facebook now. Yeah, nobody wants to say that, but do they want to have a relationship with a child instead of saying that?
Well, you don't even have to say that. Look, what if the girl is like, oh, I turned the corner to go grab her because somebody was saying that she was doing something, and when I got back there, she had her shirt off, and I'm like, oh, crap. Now I'm going to get in trouble. Like, you could just say, she's making advances that I'm not reciprocating, and I don't want it to become a questionable situation. Can you transfer me?
Yeah.
Because then it's not like I want a relationship. It's just, here are the circumstances, and I'm trying to keep any questions from happening.
Yep. You have to be the adult in the situation.
Absolutely.
Hands
He's 30
down.
years old.
Yeah. You can't just say, well, I don't want to admit this to anybody, and especially if, look, here's what happened. He didn't want to admit it to anybody because he liked it.
Because he liked it.
Right?
He liked the attention.
And that's self-evident. Res ipsa loquitur, as they say in Latin. The thing speaks for itself.
Keep laying those down.
I've had that one in my back pocket forever, and I've been waiting to use it.
Right.
I only remember so many Latin phrases from law. But anyway.
Right.
You can tell that he enjoyed the advances because he stuck
with it.
Yeah, he stuck with it. He had whatever relationship he had with this girl, even if it was, a one-time thing. Something happened with her, and so we can see, he reciprocated. So, no, you have the responsibility to be the adult in that situation, and he didn't.
Yep.
And that's what he was getting punished for, and he should have been punished equally with anybody else in that situation.
Exactly.
Because here's another problem. If you are... I understand that at a high school, there's a lot more of that, right?
Yes.
There's a lot more of, if you are the type of person that might have a relationship with somebody a lot younger than you, you should know not to go to a high school, right? But look, in life, everyday life, you're going to bump into some teenagers. You're going to have opportunity
to build relationships.
Build relationships, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you might go throughout the day without meeting or talking to somebody younger than you. That might happen for some people. But for most people, you interact with other people, and you're eventually going to interact with a person of the opposite sex that's a lot younger than you. Or if you bat from the other side of the plate, then a person of the same sex. Whatever.
Sure, yeah.
Okay? So you have to be the adult. You have to go, this is just a freaking bad idea, and I'm not going to let it happen. He failed to do that. He should have gotten the punishment that everybody else got.
Right. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I think the punishment should be worse, but it's not. But one of the main things, one of the biggest things that came to my mind when I first started reading this was the idea that we have gone to bat by waiting till a jury of some kind has looked at evidence and determined whether or not a police officer has acted wrongly or correctly in a situation, right? We looked at that with Darren Wilson. We looked at that with other police officers, some of which we said, yeah, that was unnecessary. We talked about unnecessary use of force in regards to selling cigarettes, right, in New York, like how ridiculous that is. And so we've gone to bat for police officers as much as we can, and we try to be fair. The problem is when this stuff happens and it looks like they got off. And I'm not saying that they should be treated any different than a normal person, but if it looks like they got off with something easy because they're a cop, it ruins so much hard work that good, honest police officers are trying to do to give police officers a good name.
Yep.
It makes me nervous with the idea that, like, for example, I'm teaching my kids, if you get lost, you're going to look for these kinds of people. And one of the first ones is
you racist. You're going to tell them white people. You racist.
The first thing you do is look around.
That?
That would actually put them in more danger right now because in some areas of Arizona,
what do you mean?
You're not gonna,
these kinds of people?
You're not going to be able to find a white person. I mean, that's just realistic. It's part of the Southwest. It's what makes us great. But but it's usually like if you get lost and you can't find anybody, look for a mommy and daddy who has kids with them, a police officer or someone that you recognize, right? Somebody that you know. So if they get lost at a church activity, then they'll find somebody, a leader from church. If they get lost at a school outing, they'll look for a teacher that they recognize at the school, or a police officer. Or if it's somewhere that's more like if we're on vacation, it's like try to find another family, somebody that has little kids.
As they get older, someone you recognize will work. But right now they'll be like, yeah, that guy looked like Santa Claus, only creepier.
Creepier. And he had money in a can. And
I
he smelled funny,
recognized
but
him.
he let me sit with him.
Yeah.
All right. But that's the thing. If you ruin that reputation, you'll find people. And I know people. I've had conversations with people who would say, I tell my kids not to talk to cops, even if they're lost, even if they're scared, even if they're hurt, even if they need help. Don't talk to cops. Mm-hmm. And you're like, that's terrible. Mm-hmm. That's terrible that you're paying taxes in a system that you so vehemently fear and disagree with, that you can't even take advantage of that opportunity to get help from these people.
Well, those people would argue that the terrible part of that is that they pay taxes for them.
True. Very true. So yeah,
right,
that's essentially my frustration with this. On Facebook, let me know what you think. I will go to bat for any person who's been wrongly accused of something. I don't care if you are a police officer or a regular citizen or a soldier or a congressman or anybody. But here's the truth. They're all people. Cops are people, right? And just like if you have a neighbor who's breaking the law and you want them out of the neighborhood because they are a danger to those around him, that's a person in your neighborhood. Well, guess what? This is a person on the police force, and a person can be flawed and make mistakes or do evil things. Therefore, remove them from the situation. Cops are people, which means they're good ones and bad ones. The best we can do is get rid of the bad ones. And departments, I know they vary wildly in honesty versus corruption, but if you're in a police department and you can affect in any way the ability to weed out the bad cops, it is to your huge benefit to make sure that you don't have one cop ruining it for everyone. Mm-hmm. Don't protect them. Give them their fair day in court.
Well said, Adam.
That's my piece.
Well, that is our piece for the day. We are doing a little bit shorter show because Adam feels like crap and I'm really tired.
That's true.
Thanks for listening, Facebook, and we will see you later.
Minutes, people probably jump back on Facebook and we're like, it's over?
Yeah.
And then they cried themselves to sleep.
We said what we felt today with specificity, so we didn't need to ramble on.
All right, Facebook, thanks for jumping on. Comments were awesome. Let us know what you think.